Let me just give you a little bit of a timeline and a little bit of insight into how we do this show. So we didn't know what the timing was of the Mueller report in terms of when it was going to drop until this morning. And at 9:30 a.m., William Barr gave a press conference to ostensibly take questions on the report, with no one in the audience having seen any version of the report. Why would you do this? Well, we'll get into this because this is really actually like a great lesson in how politics and spin works. The report was then released almost an hour ago to the minute. And so people are going through it. It's a 440-page report, I think it is. And apparently there's a real absence of the materials from the Intel investigation. So this is strictly on the criminal aspects of it. And I'm going to read you, some excerpts, but of course I haven't read much of it at all. And so you can take with it what you want. Some of these excerpts come from, frankly, Twitter feeds of people on the left and on the right. And so these are really, you can't see them in context, but the paragraphs themselves make relevance. But Bill Barr's performance today was shocking, I guess, to a lot of people. I mean, you'll recall when he was nominated, I think we referred to him as, just as bad as Jeff Sessions, but smarter. And the guy has a long history of running interference for presidents, dating back to the Iran-Contra affair. There are a couple of pieces I've been reading about his role in misinterpreting mispresenting Congress when he omitted parts of a Justice Department memo in 1989. That's when he was the head of the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel. It concluded at that time that the FBI could forcibly abduct people in other countries without the consent of a foreign state. So, these are, and this was a way of paving the way of abducting Manuel Noriega during the first Bush administration. He also was part of the pardon process for people involved in Iran-Contra-gate. And so this guy has a long history of this. He also wrote a 19-page memo as a job application as to why the president can't obstruct. We will, again, go through some of these things in a moment. But the important thing to understand, I think, in this is that the point of the reason why they did this, the way that this has been done, it seems to me, is that, and it's quite clear that Mueller, at least on the question of obstruction, was, and he was not in a position to say this should go to Congress, but that I think he was anticipating this question should go to Congress. The reason why we're getting the report as opposed to not getting the report is I think the White House knew there's a certain inevitability to this report coming out, whether it was going to be subpoenaed by Congress, whether it was going to be leaked, regardless. And what they understand in the White House, and I imagine they understand this in Congress too, is that how the report is made public will to a large extent, determine the way that it is absorbed by the public. So, for instance, the White House, here's a scenario. The White House does not release the report. And I say the White House because it's quite clear that that to talk about the independence of the Department of Justice at this point is sort of silly. So the White House decides not to release the report. When it comes out in the hands of Gerald Nadler, let's say, or on the maybe the Senate Judiciary Committee, and it's Patrick Leahy, and they get to be the ones. Well, it wouldn't be Patrick Leahy, so it would be Gerald Nadler, right? Because the House would get it, and Leahy's not in charge of the committee in the Senate because it's controlled by Republicans. So Gerald Nadler would be out there, and he is going to be the one who's going to tell you the important parts. Like, you can go on to Donald Trump Jr.'s Twitter feed, and I'm sure he's pulling pictures of, whatever it is, and you can get a sense of what the Mueller report says. And then you can go to Marcy Wheeler's Twitter feed and you get a different sense of what the Mueller report is, right? And when you go to Twitter, you choose who's going to be your narrator. But in terms of the country, how the report gets to the public is what will determine who gets to be the narrator for that report. Bill Barr has been desperately trying to be the narrator for weeks now. I mean, to the point where he wanted to be he knew it was so important for him to be the narrator that he is taking questions on a report that none of the reporters have seen. So he knows they can't ask the questions that the reporters want to ask. They can only ask these general questions that he wants them to ask. Now, I mean, if it was up to him, he'd want no press conference. He'd want no report. Obviously, he'd want none of this. But the report exists, so the question is, who gets to define to the public what that report means? And to some extent, that's like, what this program does and what Rush Limbaugh does and what MSNBC does and what Fox does. I mean, to some extent, that's what the dissemination of news is all about. But in this case, in terms of the report, it is a much higher stakes game that they're playing. And so this is what's going down with this. And we're going to play a couple of clips from Bill Barr's thing. And I'm going to read a couple of things from the report. This is all incredibly preliminary. And frankly, at the end of the day, I don't know what it's going to mean for anything. I don't, we still have a bunch of investigations that are extant. In terms of whether Donald Trump is going to be president between now and 2020, none of this means anything because he will be. And in terms of whether he is going to win his election in 2020, I don't know that any of this is implicated either. The speculation that somehow this would give Donald Trump a win and he would go around and this would be some type of benefit for him electorally is, I'm sorry, frankly silly. And there's absolutely no data to support that. If there was going to be a bump in the polls for Donald Trump, it would have happened before. This would have been the period we would have seen it. Because now that the report is out there, and Bill Barr is not the only person who has seen it. I mean, this is honestly like a children's book, right? Like, somebody goes, looks into the secret chest, comes out, and they're the one who tells you what's in it. Well, now the chest has been opened and other people are getting to examine it, and to the extent that they can. And I can't tell. Obviously, I have not read through 440 pages. I don't know to what extent it is redacted and what parts are redacted. The percentage of the redactions, I imagine, are far less relevant than the redactions themselves. And so what we're going to do is we're going to play just so you get a sense of where we are today. Now, we're going on vacation today. And I was thinking about, like, how come every time we go on vacation, there tends to be these sort of big news things? And I don't think it's a coincidence. Now, I'm not suggesting that
they're afraid of our attention.
they're afraid of our attention. What I am suggesting is that this show goes on vacation as per the Department of Education in New York City's calendar when I got to take care of the kids. And they're on vacation. And the calendar generally follows when holidays are. So February vacation is during President's Day. Spring vacation is during Easter and Passover. Obviously, Christmas vacation is during Christmas. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that Bill Barr presents this the day before Good Friday and going into the holidays. Just because, and I don't know that there's actual data to show this, but there's probably, like, if we got to drop it at some time, might as well do it during the time when we know people are going to holidays. And so it's not so much that they're scared of us. It's just like we're all on the same schedule.